everybody. Welcome back to our home studio from the PRPPG of UFPR in Aula of Paraná. And before I forget, you may be very worried about this class and scared or just basically hate me. And if so, I should warn you that today, or rather the 29th of this month, is your last chance to make up your mind if you want to stay with me to the end of this course. After that, you cannot cancel anymore. So I'm going to do an especially good job today so that you do not abandon this class, or I will try my best anyway. And now we're getting down to business, rolling up our sleeves, because now we're going to start writing, finally, talk about writing your introduction. All right, before I do that though, I want to do a little bit of a quick advertisement here. As you know, or if you don't, now you'll know that I am the director of a center called the Centro de Assessoria de Publicação Acadêmica, CAPA, at UFPR. This is a writing center. We support writing, academic writing, especially at the postgraduate level and for professors to publish their research, especially in English. And one of the things that we've emphasized a lot during this course is how writing isn't easy for anybody. It's always a challenge. But what does change is that people like me face these challenges many times when we go through the publication process. And therefore we kind of develop certain practical and even emotional strategies to deal with these challenges. And we're going to start a new series this month called Como Você Escreve, in which we invite professors from different academic areas to talk about how they write. Basically, just to simply tell us what they do, for example, how they choose a journal, what they do when they receive negative feedback, how they organize their time. It's in Portuguese, and this will be on July 24th, next Friday at 7 o'clock. So that's a free live panel in which you can interact and ask questions as well. It's only 1 hour long, and that's going to be on YouTube. If you want more information, I suggest you go to our Facebook page. That's Capa UFPR on Facebook. And there you can also, if you like our page, you can find all kinds of other stuff there from time to time, workshops and other things that come up that are things that are meant to help you in the academic publishing process. All right, so back to our class. We're going to talk today about some common mistakes that authors can make when they write the introduction. We're going to provide you with something that's called scaffolding for you to help you write your introduction, and just a few words about why it's worth reading other people's work. Okay. So you remember you've seen this article before, this quantifying the burden of writing research articles in a second language, data from Mexican scientists. We saw it last week in the context of making claims and then providing evidence or warranting those claims in the context of a title, helping you choose a title. And today I want to look at another element of this article and other articles, which is something very, very simple, but important, I believe. Look at this very first sentence. This is the very first sentence of the introduction. Here, this one here. And think to yourself right now, what purpose does this serve? It's not to present the research itself. It's not providing background specific to their topic. What is it doing there? The world of scientific publication is dominated by the English language. It seems almost like an obvious statement. But what this does, I guess you can compare it to kind of the background music to a movie. I mean, can you imagine watching a movie without any kind of soundtrack? I mean, imagine a horror movie without the typical creepy music in the background, or a romantic movie without some kind of score in the background. Well, this statement right here kind of sets the tone for the whole article, basically. It kind of signals what's going to come up. It foreshadows. And this kind of statement is called claiming centrality. This is a term, this claiming centrality is a term that John Swales came up with because he noticed in his analysis of several scientific research articles that a lot of articles did this kind of focusing the attention of why the general importance of the topic. Metaphorically, I look at this a lot like these marshals that help park the airplanes with their signals. You know, when the plane lands, they move their hands in kind of specific ways. These kind of torches, these flashlights that they have or whatever. And they are key signals to the pilot. The pilot is familiar with what these signals mean, and they are important to guide him or her to the right gate in this case. And just as I talked about last week, where a title is an important way to orient the reader, there's this orientation of the reader that happens throughout. And one of the problems, or not one of the common lackings I've seen in introductions is lacking that very first background music, that very first claiming of centrality to orient the reader. You can easily confuse the reader if you send the wrong signals or don't send any signal at all. And so we're going to talk about that. That's kind of like the theme for the whole class today, is how to send the right signal, how to avoid sending the wrong signal, and being aware of that. So here's a good title from the discipline of urban studies. Gentrification in the wake of a hurricane, New Orleans after Katrina. So it's a very transparent title. And have a look at the introduction here, the very first sentence. Hurricane Katrina struck the city of New Orleans in August of 2005, devastating the built environment and displacing nearly 1/3 of the city's residents. Well, again, this seems to be common knowledge. This is not a big mystery. Most people who are alive, or you know, anywhere from adolescence to adult around that time, knows about this. But it sets the tone. This is that first claiming of centrality. Of course, you could start with the second sentence. Despite the considerable literature that exists concerning Hurricane Katrina, and so on. But that very first sentence orients the reader. So again, that kind of orange sentence is key, but that green one, that claiming of centrality, it sets the tone. And so when you write your introductions, and you'll start to do that, if you haven't started already, you're going to start to do that a little bit this week. That's one of the things I want you to be aware of, is how to claim that centrality. Okay. Oh, and here you have the move with not been fully addressed. All right. So have a look at this and read it just for, take a 30 seconds to read through this. And I want you to tell me if you think this is a good introduction. All right, so it's a decent introduction in the sense that you have this territory here, this background. Much was written on interaction and electroacoustic mixed works, music. Several analytical strategies have been published, and they talk about these authors. And then there's a gap with it. However, until now, few efforts. So that's good. That's fine. But perhaps, and there's a third move there, how they occupy the niche. But perhaps what could be added here is something to provide that background. What place in the world does electroacoustic mixed works have? What is the importance? What is their main role in society? I don't know. And also these other signals are kind of set things off, and this kind of goes back to the grammar exercise that you've had. Much was written sends a signal of something that is in the past and not necessarily of relevance to the current discussion. Kind of distances the past from the present discussion. So I would say, has been, to signal this is now the territory that I'm covering, and this discussion is relevant for this current paper. The same thing with this, and this is even reinforced with this phrase here, until now. If you have something like until now, you'd have to have something more like this, have been made. So these little signals make a difference, and it's just like that guy on the airplane signaling to the pilot. You need to be aware of how you signal to your reader. Now, at this stage, I have to just take a moment here. Right. Okay, now we can go back to explain how, again, this metaphor of trying to squeeze too much into the introduction is a problem, and a common problem, and I'll show you an example of this. Okay, so here is an introduction from an unpublished manuscript, and I'm just going to move myself over down here. Let's read this together. It says, in biology, we have a lot of data to analyze, and bioinformatics has emerged to aid in the analysis of large amounts of data. Some of the forms used today are graphical representations of biological networks, so it is possible to make a more efficient analysis of certain data. Many tools have already been produced in order to provide better visualization and understanding of the data. Many who enter bioinformatics have only one side of training, biology or computer science. This leads to a larger learning curve most of the time, and although there are several software packages to aid in research and analysis, people do not always know which is better or which is going to fit your research better, and sometimes do not even know if using the software will help something in your research. A comparison between the existing software will be done, demonstrating the ups and downs of each software application and the best application for each one, verifying the attributes such as speed, complexity, accuracy, ergonomics, among others. The interfaces will also be analyzed, how the interaction between the software and the user, and what are the purposes of each software. Mainly the plotted networks and the results given by each software will be analyzed, showing what each one shows or does not show and its best application. Okay, so let's look at some key words here, and I'll say right away that when I first read this, I found this very confusing because I wasn't sure where to look. Like a pilot landing at a particular airport and getting kinds of different signals about where to steer the plane, I didn't know where I was supposed to look, what direction the author wanted me to look. And let's break this down into why that was a bit confusing and how we can improve this And through this analysis, you can then look back at your own introduction and maybe avoid these kinds of problems, or if you've written one already, kind of make it a little bit better. All right, so here you have what would appear to be kind of the establishing of territory. In biology, we have a lot of data analyzed, and bioinformatics has emerged to aid in the analysis of large amounts of data. So here you have keywords, data to analyze, bioinformatics, and the analysis of large amounts of data. Okay. So the first thing I wonder when I read this, okay, is this the claiming of the centrality? I guess it is. Then the second sentence, some of the forms used today are graphical representations of biological networks. So it is possible to make a more efficient analysis of certain data. Okay, so now I see that right after the claiming of centrality, where I would expect the topic to narrow a little bit to getting to what the main point of the research is this key term here, graphical representations. And so this sends a signal of, okay, now this is going to play a particular role in this introduction. Graphical representations are a relevant thing. Just like when you introduce a character in a movie or a book or a series on TV, you expect that character to have some kind of specific role in forwarding the plot. And so I see that, okay, there's this word graphical representation. I think, okay, so this is part of the story. Okay, fine. In the third sentence here, many tools have already been produced in order to provide a better visualization and understanding of the data. And so, in fact, you have this this graphical representation reinforced by this visualization. So it seems like they're strengthening this notion that this is going to feature as an important thing in this whole story. Okay. But then the tone changes a little bit, and you have in this kind of pinkish part here, many who enter bioinformatics have only one side of training, biology or computer science. This leads to a larger learning curve most of the time, and although there are several software packages to aid in research and analysis, people do not always know which is better or which is going to fit the research better, and sometimes do not even know if using the software will help something in the research. Okay, so we've gone from graphical representation and visualization, which is the green part. That's what I thought was going to be the main point. Now we're talking about training. Okay, because it seems that people, in this case, I suppose, people in bioinformatics aren't familiar with, because they're familiar with biological things and not necessarily interpretation of data through software. So now I'm thinking, okay, now the focus is going to be training. All right, so we'll move on. Then we get to this other part in yellow. A comparison between the existing software will be done, demonstrating the ups and downs of each software and the best application of each one, verifying the attributes such as speed, complexity, accuracy, economics, among others. Okay, so now it seems like the story has changed again, because here, now they're doing this kind of comparison. So it seems like there are three different signals being sent here, and as you'll see in a moment, I think that that's not really the case, but at a first glance, that's kind of what confused me, because I saw that there was things about graphical representation and visualization, and then I saw that there were elements about training, and then I saw that there was something about a comparison between software, and so I thought, okay, well, wait a minute, what is the main point of this? And there are several signals being sent here that seem to be not of relevance, but they will be if we can reorganize it. And so this leads me to a point that I want to make, and I'll pause here for a moment, is that nearly 1,000 people watching this now are probably wondering why on earth I have a Pikachu hat on my head. Well, it's not just because I want to be a funny dude. It's because it was the most distracting thing I could think of before I gave this class, while I'm giving the class. And I wanted to distract you on purpose, because the moment that I put on this hat and then continued teaching without explaining why I put on this hat, many of you were probably wondering, why is my teacher wearing a Pikachu hat? And maybe this question stayed in your head for the entire time that I was talking. I wouldn't be surprised. And so when you introduce a concept that doesn't seem to have relevance to the rest of the discussion, or it's not clear what the relevance is in your introduction, it's like you're putting on this Pikachu hat. And people keep waiting for an explanation of why this Pikachu hat is on your head. Now you have the explanation of why this Pikachu hat is on my head. But I could have done it before, I suppose, I put it on. Or I could have explained it. Maybe it would have been less distracting. Maybe you would have listened to me more as I was speaking instead of wondering why he's wearing this Pikachu hat. So be careful with this. This is one of the most common problems I see in the writing of introductions. And it has to do with that metaphor I showed you earlier of somebody trying to push a bunch of information into a subway train, which can happen when you, master's student, you, doctoral student, have spent a lot of time thinking about your research, writing about your research, and then try to cram all that into a little bitty introduction. So that's going to be a really key point today, is please be careful with what I call extraneous information in your introduction. And you're going to have an exercise about how to work on that. I can take this off now. It's like this picture with Big Bird in the middle of a Star Wars movie. There might be a reason why he's there, but it's not clear. He seems to be out of place, and that thing that's out of place can be very distracting. Okay, so let's go back to this paragraph in the introduction, see how we can rework it, and then hopefully in this process you can also attempt to rework yours or think about yours in different ways. Okay. So if this information here that seems to be out of place, what would happen if we just took it out? Would it add or subtract anything? Well, if you take it out, it doesn't seem to make much difference in the story. It may have elsewhere in the article, but in this introduction, the fact of graphical representation and visualization doesn't seem to have relevance. It kind of distracts. So, especially graphical representation, if you took that, you can just take that right out. And if you read it, in biology, we have a lot of data to analyze, and biometrics has emerged to aid in the analysis of large amounts of data. Many tools have already been produced in order to provide better visualization and understanding of the data. That's a kind of smoother claiming of centrality and moving of the telling of this story without this other character of graphical representations being introduced into the plot. But then you have this other bit here. Although there are several software packages to aid in research and analysis, many do not always know which is better or which is going to fit the research better, and sometimes do not even know if using the software will help something in the research. Okay, so this seems to be actually something that is embedded in this paragraph. That is actually, they're talking about a problem. And the problem is, and it's kind of buried here, the problem is that there's lots of software out there, but people don't know which one fits better. So the story is actually kind of shaping up to be, in biology, you have a lot of data to analyze, and bioinformatics supports that analysis. However, there is a lot of software. There are a lot of different packages of software packages or types of software to do that, but people don't know which one is better. Okay, so now we're getting somewhere here. But maybe this part, the training part here, this part in red, kind of throws me off because you haven't presented the problem of this, not knowing which one is better first. And so it's maybe a little bit out of sequence. So what if we do something more like this? We move this part here, this many who enter bioinformatics only have one side of training, to after that. Okay, now maybe we're getting somewhere. Now let's read this reorganization. In biology, we have a lot of data to analyze, and bioinformatics has emerged to aid in the analysis of large amounts of data. Although there are several software packages to aid in research and analysis, people do not always know which is better, which is going to fit the research better, and sometimes do not even know if using the software will help something in the research. Many who enter bioinformatics have only one side of training, biology or computer science. This leads to a better learning curve most of the time. A larger learning curve most of the time. Okay, this seems to be a bit more logical to me because you're saying, okay, we have bioinformatics, we have lots of different software, they don't know which one's better, and moreover, and here we're going to get to this, how maybe this doesn't necessarily connect very well. Many who enter bioinformatics only have one side of training. Okay. This is just to show that there are a couple of mistakes to fix there. Now here, I've added something to make this connect better. This is what some people call a discourse marker, or some people call it a connecting device or connective. There is a logical connection here, and I've made this clear to the reader. Again, the signaling to the pilot. That I'm expanding on this thought in red here. So let's read it one more time. In biology, we have a lot of data to analyze, blah, blah, blah. Although there are lots of software packages to help, people don't know which one is better. After all, many who enter bioinformatics only have one side of training, biology or computer science, and this leads to a larger learning curve most of the time. Now if I'm landing in my airplane, and I'm trying to go to the right gate, this is now sending me in a clearer direction. Because here I can see that they've claimed a centrality and they're arguing towards a solution by presenting the problem in a very coherent way and in a cohesive way through this after all. It all kind of makes logical sense now. But it took some reorganizing. And then there is this comparison, which is the occupation of the niche, this move 3. And this one more connective device adds a little bit even more coherence by saying, okay, again, another signal to the pilot. Therefore, based on everything I've said, therefore, a comparison between existing software will be done. Okay, now it makes sense. You have this here, and then since you have all that data, you have software to analyze it, but it can be a bit confusing. People in this area don't have the training for it, so that justifies the comparison. Now it all makes sense. And I could see that because I couldn't understand it, but the person who wrote this couldn't because they've been embedded, sleeping, eating, dreaming, swimming in the research for such a long time that they needed fresh eyes. And so another important point that I want to get to today is how those fresh eyes can help you see these Pikachu hats, these big birds walking among the Star Wars characters. And so today, after class is finished, I'm going to want you to do a little activity based on the story Three Little Pigs. Now, some of you might be thinking, what? You know, I'm not 5 years old. Why do I need to work on a Three Little Pigs story? Well, I choose the Three Little Pigs for a couple of reasons. One is you can tell the story in a very like 3 or 4 or 5 sentences. It's a story that everybody knows the story, so you know what the real, quote unquote, real story is. And it's something that you can look at from a very basic point of view to work on a very important concept. I don't want to add a complicated exercise to try to work on something that may be already a bit complex for you when you think about it, if you've never thought about this concept before of extraneous information. And so you'll have an exercise that's going to be your kind of one of your main exercises for this module this week. And so I'm going to need you to spend some time on it. And you'll be spending even more time on working on your introduction. And you will see on Moodle, on the Module 5 Moodle, there's this kind of form called the Introduction Ideas Juicer. I call this an ideas juicer because it's to kind of help you kind of juice your ideas out. I guess I could have also called it a dance instructor because, you know, when you start learning to do a dance, a ballroom dance for the first time, it's very rigid and stiff at first. And then if you watch somebody who's really good at doing a particular dance, swing or jitterbug or faha or whatever it is, it's like you marvel at them. It's like this, it's so beautiful. But that beauty comes out after getting used to the very basic steps, and then the creativity happens after that. It emerges with a lot of practice. And this is basically the very beginning of the steps. That this helps you break these steps down in your introduction. So this is a kind of form, very, very formal way for you to kind of scaffold your introduction from the very basic steps. It helps you organize your ideas. And you'll need to submit this this week. So I'm giving you more extra time to work on this because it does take time. Considering everything that we've talked about so far in the course, all of the moves, all of the considering of the naysayer, considering your introduction, considering the claiming of centrality, and considering avoiding extraneous information, putting all that down there to kind of synthesize everything that we've talked about, submit it, and that will be kind of the beginning, the baby step beginning of your introduction. And so as I note on the form that's in Moodle, even though you will have access to your answers after you submit, just in case, I would suggest either writing your answers separately first on a Word document, or after you put them into the form, then copy and paste them onto a separate document. So just in case you don't lose them, because this is something that really kind of helps you get started. You will not be at this stage formally assessed about the quality of your writing at all. And as a matter of fact, you don't even have to at this stage even write it in English if you don't want to. I'm just trying to get you to think about this from the reader's standpoint, or the pilot's standpoint, if you will. Think about how to best organize your thoughts, organize the sequence in which you want to present the information, all those kind of macro issues. So if it helps you to think about this first in your first language, whatever language that is, that's fine too. This is not for me to judge right now in terms of grading you. It's about you getting your ideas organized. So I want you to, whatever language you want to put it in to get those juices flowing, so be it. Because soon you will be asked to give feedback to your colleagues, and that feedback will start happening next week, not Module 5, but starting in Module 6, because the main part of this course is the introduction. The introduction, as I've said in a few other moments in this course, is one of the most important parts of this course. We spent a lot of time on it. Why? Because first of all, it's something that's realistic. I can't expect you especially during this time, this really strange time in the world, to produce an entire article during the time that we have in this course. Second of all, the introduction is one of the more sort of standard, has a more standard shape to it across most disciplines, areas of science. That section is one of the most kind of standardized, conventionalized. After that, in all of the different scientific areas, you often, in different journals, you have very different permutations of the way information is presented and demands and expectations. Thirdly, the introduction has consistently been shown to be one of the more difficult parts of an article to write for everybody, but especially non-native speakers, because they're not familiar with the conventions involved, and because when compared to other sections such as presenting your results or talking about your methodology, the argumentation and the persuasion, as it were, that is involved in the introduction section requires a kind of discourse that is more complex. But here, hopefully after this course, it's not as complex as it was at the beginning. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, the introduction section is kind of like your calling card. It's your foot in the door. If you can start off on that right foot, making that good first impression with your introduction, that can go a long way in making a good impression on the person who's reviewing your article. So we're going to be focusing a lot on that in this course, and you'll be asked to give feedback on other people's writing. Now, some of you might ask, well, why on earth should I give feedback on somebody who's not the teacher of this course? I mean, I want to know from an expert like Dr. Martinez, what is good about my writing or what isn't? Well, that's a very good question, a very valid question. And one of the important things that we focus on at our writing center at the Universidade Federal do Paraná, this CAPA, here you're seeing pictures from our old center, the old location. One of the things that we focus on is the importance of talking about your writing, that the value of talking to others about your writing, focusing on writing as a process. So first of all, it's also very well established that talking about your ideas, talking about your writing helps you write. People focus on the act of writing, but actually the act of speaking helps you think through your writing. And even if you don't even get actual feedback from the person who's listening to you, sometimes just talking about it can help you with your writing. All right. Another important thing about this giving feedback is it is true that you may not get extremely valuable feedback from the person who's reviewing your work, although oftentimes you do, if there are specific points to look at. But the main point is that the one who benefits from receiving the feedback, actually, or the one who benefits most from the feedback process is the one actually giving the feedback. So in this context, in a pedagogical context in which people are learning to write better, being able to analyze, deconstruct someone else's writing in a critical way also means that you can look at your own writing in the same light. That you'll be able to if you can find where people can improve in their writing, other people's writing, then you should be able to do the same in yours, which is why I always try to encourage advisors, orientadores, to include their advisees in the process of reviewing manuscripts, because if you can look at an unpublished manuscript and see issues with it, then it raises your own awareness about issues in your own writing, and you can put yourself more easily into the head of a reviewer who's and what kind of questions that may come up. So that's why we're going to go through this, at least 2 rounds actually, of this kind of reviewing other people's work and why we do that. All right. So I know this is kind of scary for a lot of people, like, oh no, I have to write an introduction. No, this is, just think of this as you're filling out a form. That form on Moodle is just a form, just like you would fill out a form for whatever, getting your driver's license. Actually, no, that's kind of scary too. A form, just filling out a form, and that's it. That's your first step. That's your main thing. Focus on that, and it's all gonna be all right. All right. This is the text that you're gonna see for you to work on as well, and hopefully you have fun with it. Be creative if you like. Think of writing as a fun thing. So keep calm, carry on. Today's class is shorter. You're gonna find that our classes start to get a bit shorter and shorter. Sometimes they'll be a bit longer. Today's a bit shorter, and the first classes were very long because it's enough about writing isn't about me talking. You writing is not going to help you. Me talking is not going to help you write. I can talk less and get you to write more. If I get you to write more, me talking less, then I'm doing my job right. So that's enough about me and enough from me for today. There's lots for you to do on Moodle, and I wish you all the best and have happy writing.